The gun came out at 11:52 p.m. Not loudly, not dramatically. It came out the way dangerous things always do. Quietly, beneath a table, with the casual ease of someone who had done it 100 times before. A silencer threaded onto the barrel. One smooth turn. Then the hand slid back into a lap and the man picked up his coffee cup and smiled at the waitress across the room. She smiled back. And then she saved his life. Before this night was over, a woman who earned $11 an hour would stand between 3 professional killers and the most feared crime boss in the city. She would hide him in a freezer, bluff her way through a gunpoint standoff, take a bullet meant for a man she had known for 40 minutes, and say something to him in the dark that he would carry for the rest of his life. Her name was Evelyn, and she was just trying to finish her shift. If you are new here, subscribe right now and hit that bell, because this is the kind of story you will want to watch twice. Let us get into it. Evelyn had worked the late shift at Milo's diner for 6 years. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. She knew the sound the door made, a 2-note creak of tired hinges. She knew which tables wobbled. She knew that the fluorescent bulb above the pie display buzzed louder when it was about to die. She knew everything about this place the way you only know something you have spent years paying careful, quiet attention to. She was 37 years old, a single mother, a woman who had grown up in the foster care system, moved through 17 different homes before the age of 18, and come out the other side with 2 things intact: her stubbornness and her ability to read a room. That second skill, the reading of rooms, was the thing that kept people fed and tipped well. It was also the thing that saved a man's life on a rainy Tuesday in November. At 11:09 p.m., a man in an expensive but wrinkled suit walked in and sat in the back booth. He did not look at the menu. He did not take out a phone. He ordered water. When Evelyn brought it and looked at his face, really looked the way she rarely allowed herself, she saw something that made her chest go tight. She had seen that expression before, in the mirror, on the night she was told she had no living family left. It was the expression of a person who had already decided it was acceptable if tonight was the last night. She thought, that man is waiting to die. She had no idea how right she was. At 11:41 p.m., 3 men walked in. They were well-dressed, polite. The one who led them, lean, 40-something, with pleasant eyes and the unhurried manner of someone who had nowhere to be, smiled at her and asked for the corner table. The second one was younger, maybe late 20s, with a jaw so tight it looked like it might crack. The third one said nothing at all and sat with his back to the wall, which is what you do when you need to see everything. Evelyn smiled. She brought menus. She said the soup of the day was tomato basil and the pie was fresh. She was professional and warm, and the whole time she was at that table she was aware, the way a person is aware of a hot stove even when they are not looking directly at it, that something about these 3 men was deeply surgically wrong. She went back to the counter. She told herself she was imagining things. Then she looked in the mirror and saw the silencer. Kim Do-han was 52 years old and had not been afraid of anything in 2 decades. He had built the Yongma Syndicate from nothing, 4 men and a debt, into something that moved through the city like a second circulatory system. Invisible, essential, and ruthless. He had warehouses, lawyers, judges who owed him favors, and a penthouse with a view that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. He also had, somewhere inside his organization, a traitor. Someone had sold him. His schedule, his habits, his location, all of it handed over to a rival organization that had been waiting 3 years for an opening. He had discovered it 48 hours ago when his driver found a tracking device bolted under the rear bumper. He had confirmed it 24 hours ago when a man he had known for 15 years, a man he had trusted the way you trust family, stopped answering his phone. Do-han had sent his bodyguards away. All of them, because if one person inside his circle had turned, he could not trust that the others hadn't. He was completely alone for the first time in 20 years. He sat in a booth in a diner that had nothing to do with his world, and he drank water and he tried to think. He tried to remember who he had been before he became someone who needed to think about these things. When 3 men walked into the diner and he recognized the face of the man who led them, Do-han's blood turned to cold water. Jin-woo, 41 years old, 16 years in this profession. The man was not angry, Not theatrical, not personal about any of it. He was simply the most efficient killer Duhan had ever encountered, and the fact that he was here in this diner at this hour meant that the contract on Duhan's life had been filled by people who did not miss. Duhan sat very still. He calculated his options. The front door, Jinwoo's table, was between him and it. The kitchen, possible, but he did not know the layout. His phone, useless, because the moment he called anyone he risked confirming that the traitor was still feeding information in real time. He was trapped, and he knew it. And the strange thing, the thing that would confuse him later when he tried to reconstruct the night, was that somewhere beneath the cold calculation, beneath the fear he would not name, he felt something close to relief. As if a long, exhausting argument had finally been settled. Then the waitress picked up the coffee pot. Evelyn's hands were shaking under the counter. Her brain was running very fast, the way it did when Marcus was sick and she had to calculate doctor's bills against her bank account in the checkout line, while keeping her face completely calm for the sake of the person behind her. The shaking was below the surface. Nothing showed. She did not call the police. She had exactly one reason for that. If she called and the dispatcher put her on hold, or sent a patrol car that was 6 minutes away, or did anything except materialize 3 officers through the door in the next 90 seconds, then the man in the back booth was dead before help arrived. She did not know who he was. She did not know what he had done. What she knew was that he was about to be killed in her diner, and she was not built for looking away. She picked up the coffee pot and walked to the table of 3 men. "Can I top anyone off?" she said. Her voice was perfect, warm, unhurried. "Please," said Jinwoo. He had very pleasant eyes. That was somehow the most frightening thing about him. She poured, carefully, slowly, and as she reached across to fill the 3rd cup, her elbow caught the edge of the carafe and it tipped. Hot coffee swept across the table. It hit Jinwoo's sleeve. It soaked the papers that Dae-sung had spread across the table to look like a business meeting. Dae-sung made a sound like a man swallowing a grenade. "Oh my God," Evelyn said. Loudly enough that the elderly man with the newspaper at the front table looked up, loudly enough to fill the whole diner. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Let me get something. I will pay for the dry cleaning. I am so sorry." She was already pressing napkins onto the table, already creating noise and movement and chaos, and the men were leaning back and dabbing at themselves, and for 45 seconds every hand in the room was occupied and every eye in the diner was on this moment. 45 seconds was all she needed. She was back at the counter. She picked up the phone as if taking a takeout order. She dialed Ray in the kitchen. Ray was 63 years old. He had served 2 tours overseas, come back with a bad knee and a permanent stillness about him, and spent the last 8 years frying eggs at Milo's without complaint. He had never once asked Evelyn about her life. She had never once asked about his. They understood each other perfectly. He answered on the 2nd ring. "What? Hey," she said, in her warmest, most professional voice. "I've got 3 regulars out front, the 11:30 group. You know the ones. All 3 of them." A pause. She could hear Ray breathing. Then, quietly, flatly, "Copy that." She hung up. She looked at the kitchen door. Then she looked at the back booth. Kim Duhan was watching her. He had been watching her since she picked up the coffee pot. His face was unreadable in the way that faces are when the person wearing them has spent decades making them so. But his eyes were different. In his eyes she saw something she had not expected. He was not confused. He was not frightened. He was looking at her the way you look at something that doesn't fit any category you have, and trying to understand what category it belongs to. She picked up a plate of food that nobody had ordered and walked to his booth. She set it down in front of him. She leaned in as if reading back his order. "Do not go outside," she said quietly, without looking at his face. "Not for any reason." Duhan was still for 1 beat. Then, "Who are you?" "Your waitress. And you look like a man who needs to eat something." She walked away before he could answer. She went behind the counter. She took 1 breath through her nose. She thought, "Okay, what next?" The lights went out. Ray had found the fuse box. The diner dropped into darkness that was not total. Orange streetlight bled through the windows in long stripes. But enough. Enough for 2 seconds of genuine confusion. Enough for Daesung to say something sharp in Korean that she couldn't understand but absolutely could translate from tone alone. Enough for Jinwoo to go completely still the way a predator goes still when something unexpected happens and it is reassessing. Evelyn was already moving. 6 years in this diner. She knew every table, every chair, every sticky patch of linoleum by the feel of it through her shoes. She moved through the dark with one hand trailing the counter, through the swinging kitchen door, past the grill and the prep tables, and she found Duhan already on his feet in the back booth, already moving toward the kitchen, already alert in the way of a man whose body remembers how to survive even when his mind has given up. She grabbed his wrist. "With me." He did not hesitate. That would strike her later as remarkable. That a man like Kim Duhan, a man who had commanded rooms, organizations, entire territories, followed a woman he had known for 11 minutes through a pitch-black kitchen without a single word of argument. She would ask him about it eventually. He would say, "You were the only person in the room who knew what to do." She would say, "I absolutely did not know what I was doing." And he would say, "I know. That is what made me trust you." Ray was against the back wall, fire extinguisher in both hands, face completely calm. He jerked his chin toward the back. Evelyn pulled Duhan past the dry goods shelves to the heavy steel door at the end of the kitchen. She pulled it open. Cold air poured out like a held breath releasing. "In here," she said. Duhan looked at the walk-in freezer. He looked at her. Something moved across his face. Something she would later decide was the first real thing she had seen on it all night. He stepped inside. She stepped in after him and pulled the door closed, and the darkness was absolute. If the story has you on the edge of your seat right now, drop a like. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. And leave a comment telling me, would you have done what Evelyn did? Because most people say yes before they think about it and then change their answer. Keep watching. It was cold. That was the first thing and the biggest thing, the cold, which settled immediately into the bones and did not negotiate. Evelyn could hear her own breathing. She could hear Duhan's, too. Slower than hers. More disciplined. But she was close enough that she could feel the warmth coming off him, and she could hear the exact moment his breathing changed. A subtle deepening, a loss of that rigid control, because even Kim Duhan, in a freezer in the dark with the sounds of 3 assassins tearing a diner apart on the other side of a steel door, was finally, quietly afraid. "Hide here," she said, came out softer than she intended. "They are after you." "I know," he said. A pause. Outside, something overturned. Footsteps moved across tile. A voice in Korean, low and methodical. Jinwoo was searching. "How many men do you have?" she said. "None." She absorbed that. "None? You're here alone." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I couldn't trust anyone else to be here." She opened her mouth and closed it. She had 50 questions and no time for any of them. She pressed her back against the cold metal shelving and wrapped her arms around herself and thought about Marcus asleep at home in the apartment 3 miles away. Face soft the way children's faces go when they sleep. One arm thrown over the side of the bed the way it always was. She had told him last week, over cereal, that the most important thing a person could do was notice when something was wrong and not pretend they hadn't. She had not anticipated he would have occasion to hold that statement against her so quickly. "Why did you do this?" Duhan said. He asked it quietly, the way he said everything, not gently exactly, but with a precision that suggested he would not ask something he did not truly want answered. "You don't know me." "No, I don't." "Then why?" Evelyn thought about it. Genuinely thought about it, which was not something she always did because her life had taught her that thinking too long about the right thing to do was how people talked themselves out of doing it. "When you walked in tonight," she said, "you sat down and you didn't look at the menu. You didn't touch your phone. You just sat there with this look on your face." She paused. "I know that look." "What look?" "Like you'd already decided it was okay if this was the last night." Silence. Outside. Something scraped across the floor. Daesung's voice again. Closer now, tighter. The voice of a young man trying to prove himself and getting impatient. Then Jinwoo's voice cutting across it, brief and flat, and silence again. "I've had that look," Evelyn said. "I don't like it on people." Duhan said nothing for a long moment. Then, I had a daughter. She had not expected that. Had. She died 6 years ago. She was 14. He said it plainly, with the practiced flatness of someone who had repeated it enough times that the words had been worn smooth. But smooth was not the same as healed. There was a hospital. There was a bill. There were decisions about which bill came first. He stopped. I had money by then. More than enough. But she died before I understood that having money meant I was supposed to use it for things like that. Evelyn did not say she was sorry. People always said that, and it never helped anything. She said, "What was her name?" A pause. "Soo-yun." "That's beautiful." Another pause. Longer. The sounds outside had gone quiet, and the quiet was worse than the noise because quiet meant they were either gone or they were listening. She and Duhan were both holding very still, both breathing as shallowly as the cold would allow. Then, very quietly, Duhan said, "I built something after that. I told myself it was for people like me, people who arrived here with nothing and found that the system had no place for them. In the beginning it was, we lent money when banks said no. We stood between businesses and people who wanted to take them apart. We were," he exhaled, "we were necessary. We were what the community needed. And then we were something else." He said it without flinching. "I don't know exactly when. There is never one moment you can point to. There are 100 small decisions that each seem reasonable, and then you look up and you are somewhere you never said you wanted to be, and the person you meant to be is so far behind you that you cannot see them anymore." Evelyn was quiet. She could see nothing, the darkness was perfect, but she was aware of him with the whole of her attention, the way you are aware of someone in the dark when they are saying something they have never said out loud before. "I came here tonight," Duhan said, "because I didn't know where else to go. I have a building with 30 floors. I know people in 6 governments. And I didn't know where to go." He made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "So I came to a diner." "You came to the right diner," Evelyn said. "Apparently." And this time there was something in his voice that was not quite humor but was adjacent to it. And it was the most human thing she had heard from him yet. Then the door handle moved. Evelyn's whole body went rigid. The handle pressed down, slowly, deliberately. Not the sharp movement of someone finding a door by accident, but the careful, testing pressure of someone who already suspects what is on the other side. She and Duhan both pressed back against the shelving. Neither breathed. The door opened an inch. Cold light cut across the floor of the freezer like a blade. In it she could see their breath rising in thin plumes. She could see Duhan's hand on the shelf beside her. Fingers curled. Knuckles white. A voice outside. Dae-sung. Saying something short and clipped. Then silence. Then the pressure on the door released. The crack of light disappeared. Then Jin-woo's voice. Outside. Close enough that she could hear the texture of it through the steel. Calling Dae-sung away. Firm. Controlled. The footsteps moved away. Neither of them moved for a full 30 seconds. Then Evelyn let out a breath so long and so shaky that she felt lightheaded. Duhan's hand found her arm in the dark. Not grabbing, not forceful, just present. A hand on an arm. And he said, very quietly, "Breathe. I am breathing." "You stopped." She almost laughed. She did not. "Are they going to figure it out?" "Jin-woo is going to figure it out," Duhan said. "He is methodical. He will work through the building systematically. He will come back." He paused. "We have maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes until what?" "Until he opens that door fully and there is nothing left to do." Evelyn thought. The cold was very bad now, working through her thin uniform like it had a personal grievance. She thought about Ray outside the door. She thought about the elderly man with the newspaper. Had he gotten out? She thought about her phone, which had no signal in here. She thought about Marcus. "There is a service exit," she said. "At the back of the kitchen. It goes to the alley." "I know. Then they will have covered it." Duhan said it with the tired certainty of a man who has planned enough of these things to know how they go. Jin-woo will have sent Park to the exits the moment the lights went out. There will be someone in the alley. Then what do we do? Duhan was quiet. She could feel him thinking. You should go, he said. There is a way through the ceiling. Absolutely not. Evelyn. No. She said it flat and final, the voice she used with Marcus when the conversation was over. I did not pull you in here so that I could leave you in here. That is not how this works. This is not your problem. You are in my diner, she said. In my freezer. In my city. You became my problem the moment you walked through that door and sat down like a man with nothing left. She stopped. Then, quieter. I have a son, 10 years old. He is waiting for me at home and I am going to walk through our door at 7 this morning. I am going to. But I am not going to do it by leaving you here. So think of something else. A long silence. Then Duhan said, You are a very unusual person. I've been told. I mean it as the highest compliment I know how to give. She pulled her arms tighter around herself. Then think of something worth complimenting. In the kitchen, something changed. They both heard it, a different quality of noise. Not the methodical searching sounds they had been hearing. Something sharper. A struggle. Then Ray's voice, and Ray never raised his voice, which meant something was very wrong. Then a sound that Evelyn recognized with a clarity that went through her like ice water. The sound of someone hitting the floor. Duhan said nothing, but she felt him move, felt him shift his weight, felt the quality of his stillness change from waiting to something else entirely. Ray, she said, barely a whisper. He is alive, Duhan said. If they wanted him dead, he would not have made that sound. She was already at the door, her hand on the handle. I have to. Wait. His hand covered hers on the handle. Not restraining her. Just present. If you go out there alone, you are dead in 10 seconds. If I stay in here while Ray is being hurt, we go together, Duhan said. Or not at all. She looked at him in the darkness that she could not see him in. She heard his breathing. She made a decision. Together, she said. He pressed something into her hand. Cold and cylindrical. She closed her fingers around it and realized it was a knife. A small one, a pocket knife, nothing dramatic. I have had it for 30 years, he said. I have never used it. But I have never not had it. She almost said, This is very much not reassuring. She did not say it. She tightened her grip. He said, When the door opens, you go left. I go right. Stay low. Do not stop moving. I have literally no training for any of this. Neither did I the first time. A pause. The advantage of having no training is that you are unpredictable. That is the most insane comfort I have ever been offered. Are you ready? She thought about Marcus. She thought about Soo-Yun, Duhan's daughter, 14 years old, and the look on a father's face when he says her name 6 years later in a freezer. She thought about all the things she had not done yet and all the things she still wanted to do, and then she stopped thinking about all of that because thinking about it was not going to help. Ready, she said. He pulled the door open. They came out of the freezer fast and low, which was Duhan's instruction, and it was the right one. The kitchen was semi-dark. The emergency light above the back exit was the only illumination, casting everything in a dim red glow that made the whole room look like the inside of something that had already stopped working. Ray was on the floor against the far wall, conscious. His eyes were open and furious, but he had a hand pressed to his side and there was blood on his fingers. Dae-sung was standing over him with a gun and the expression of a man proving something. Jin-woo was by the swinging door to the dining room. He turned the moment the freezer opened and he looked at them and his face did not change at all, which was somehow the most frightening thing that had happened all night. Park was nowhere. Duhan registered Park's absence in the same moment she did, and she felt him tense. Park being absent was the worst possible piece of information. Duhan, Jin-woo said, calm, pleasant even, like two old colleagues running into each other somewhere unexpected. I apologize for the inconvenience. I will make this brief. Jin-woo, Duhan said. Same register, same careful evenness. How much? Jin-woo tilted his head slightly. It is not personal. It never is with you. How much? More than I am willing to decline. Duhan nodded slowly. His eyes moved to Dae-sung, standing over Ray. to the gun in Daesung's hand, to the distance between Evelyn and the exit. He was calculating. She could feel him calculating. She was calculating too, and everything she calculated came out terrible. Then Evelyn took 2 steps forward. "Stop," said Jinwoo. And the pleasantness was still there, but something beneath it had become very direct. She stopped, but she was now standing beside Duhan rather than behind him, and she looked at Jinwoo and she said, in a voice she did not know she possessed until it came out, "You kill him, you have a witness. You kill both of us. 2 bodies in a diner is a headline for a week. Every detective in the city comes through that door. Crime scene, forensics, the whole situation." She paused. "But if he walks out of here right now, this never happened. You report a clean miss. You keep your reputation and you stay invisible. That is a better outcome for everyone." Silence. Jinwoo looked at her with an expression that was, for the first time, genuinely unreadable. He looked at Duhan. He looked back at Evelyn. "You're the waitress," he said. "I am the waitress," she agreed. "And I have been standing here for the last 30 seconds completely calm, which should tell you something about how serious I am." She was not calm. Her heart was attempting to exit her body through her sternum, but her face was still. 6 years of late shifts and difficult customers and a childhood that had required her to keep her face still no matter what was happening behind it had prepared her, apparently, for exactly this. Jinwoo looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Daesung. And Daesung, who was 29 and hungry and did not have Jinwoo's discipline, raised his gun. She did not see where the shot came from. She heard it. A sharp crack that bounced off the kitchen tiles and seemed to come from everywhere at once. And she felt the heat of it graze her left shoulder, there and then searing, and the force of it spun her sideways. She hit the prep table. She caught herself on her hands. Duhan moved. She had not known a 52-year-old man could move like that. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and he hit Daesung with the weight of a person who had spent 2 decades not fighting and now had an enormous amount of stored violence to spend. Daesung went down hard. The gun skidded across the tile floor. Duhan kicked it away and turned. Jinwoo had not moved. He was watching all of this with the expression of a man revising his assessment of a situation. His gun was in his hand but not raised. He looked at Daesung on the floor. He looked at Duhan. He looked at Evelyn, who had straightened up from the prep table and was pressing her right hand against her left shoulder, and whose uniform was going dark at the sleeve. Ray, from the floor, said in a completely flat voice, "I called 911 4 minutes ago from the kitchen landline. They are 2 minutes out." A silence so complete Evelyn could hear the blood in her own ears. Jinwoo looked at Ray. He looked at the window. He made a calculation. He looked at Duhan one last time, and there was something in that look that was not regret and not threat and not apology but was the look of 2 men who understand each other and know that this particular conversation is not over, only paused. Then Jinwoo walked out the back door into the alley. He was gone. Before we get to the ending, and there is an ending that I promise you will not see coming. If you have been watching this story and feeling it, please subscribe. This channel exists because people like you keep showing up. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what comes next. Duhan was beside her before she had fully registered that she was on the floor. She did not remember sitting down. Her legs had apparently made a decision without consulting the rest of her. She was on the floor against the prep table and her shoulder was burning in a way that was specific and insistent, and Duhan was kneeling in front of her pressing his jacket. His expensive, beautiful, absolutely ruined jacket, against the wound, and she looked at him and said the first thing that came into her head. "That is a very nice jacket." "It is," he said. "It does not matter. It's going to stain." "Evelyn." "I'm fine," she said. "I'm fine. It just grazed me. I know what a graze feels like." "How do you know what a graze feels like?" "Growing up where I grew up," she said. And he looked at her and did not ask any more questions. He kept pressure on the shoulder. His hands were steady. She focused on his face because it was something to focus on, and she was aware that she was in shock, mildly, the edges of things going slightly unreal, and she needed something real to look at. "You didn't have to come out of the freezer," he said. "Yes, I did. I gave you an exit. There is no version of tonight," she said. Where I stay in a freezer while Ray is bleeding on the floor. There is no version of that. I don't have that version. He looked at her. Really looked at her, the way she had looked at him earlier that night. And something happened in his face. Something that was not the practiced blankness she had watched him wear all evening. Something came up through it the way light comes up through water, slow and unstoppable. When I came in tonight, he said, I sat in that booth and I thought about a lot of things. About my organization. About my daughter. About what I have built and what I have destroyed and whether the balance of those two things has any relationship to each other. He paused. I did not think that I was going to matter to anyone before the night was out. Evelyn looked at him. Her shoulder hurt. The kitchen was cold and smelled like blood and burnt coffee. Sirens were audible now, getting louder, painting the walls through the window with red and blue. You mattered to me, she said. As soon as you walked in. You didn't know me. I know a person who needs someone to decide they matter, she said. I've been that person. It doesn't take long to recognize it. The sirens were very close now. Ray, from the floor, said, Ambulance, finally. And then, because he was Ray, the pie is probably cold. And despite everything, the shoulder, the cold, the blood, the wreckage of the kitchen, the three assassins in the wind, Evelyn laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her, and Duhan's face moved again. And this time what came through it was unmistakable. He smiled. Not the controlled, diplomatic expression she imagined he deployed in boardrooms and negotiations. A real smile, unfamiliar on his face. Like a light turned on in a room that had been dark for years. The paramedics came through the back door first. They took Ray. Then they took Evelyn, who argued about it until Duhan said, very quietly, Please. And she stopped arguing. The police came. There were many questions. Duhan answered them in a way that was careful and complete and managed to be entirely truthful while volunteering nothing that wasn't asked. It was, Evelyn thought, watching him, an extraordinary skill. Her shoulder was a graze. Deep enough to require stitches, nothing more. She sat on the back step of an ambulance while a paramedic worked on it, and she thought about Marcus. And she called him from a borrowed phone. And when he answered, groggy and frightened, and said, Mom? Mom, why are you calling from a weird number? Where are you? It's 3 a.m. She said, I'm okay, baby. Everything is okay. I'm coming home. And she heard him exhale. That long specific exhale of a child whose worst fear has just been lifted. And she had to close her eyes for a moment. Duhan stood a few feet away. He had a blanket around his shoulders that he was clearly not comfortable with and a police officer in front of him that he was very comfortable with. He looked across the scene and found her on the ambulance step and their eyes met and she gave him a small nod. He gave her one back. It meant something. She was not sure yet what exactly, but it meant something. When Marcus arrived, because he took a taxi, which she had told him never to do alone, which she was going to have to address. He came through the police tape at a run and she opened her arms and he crashed into them and she held him with her good arm and felt the specific aliveness of him against her. His heart hammering, his voice muffled in her shoulder saying, I knew something happened, I knew it, I could feel it. And she said, I've got you. I've got you. Over the top of his head, she looked at Duhan, who was watching this from across the street. He was still. His face was doing the thing again, light coming up through water. But it was different now. More complicated. She would think about it later and understand that what she was seeing was a man looking at a child and feeling the specific shape of the thing he had lost. She held Marcus tighter. 3 months passed. The diner was rebuilt. Anonymously funded, completely, right down to the new pie display with the fluorescent bulb that did not buzz. Ray came back to work in February, slower now, more careful of his left side, but present, always present, with the same flat effect and the same perfect eggs and the same way of looking at everything and saying nothing that made Evelyn feel, somehow, that the world was still navigable. She did not see Duhan. She did not expect to. She thought about him sometimes, the way you think about a dream that felt important but whose meaning you can't quite fix. Present, somehow, in the texture of ordinary days. Then, on a Thursday in February, a town car parked outside the diner. A man in a suit came in. He was not Duhan. He was younger, precise, with the manner of someone who delivered messages professionally and had no personal relationship with their content. He sat at the counter. Evelyn came over with the coffee pot. He slid an envelope across the counter. She looked at it. She looked at him. The envelope was heavy and there was no writing on it. He said to tell you that this is the least inadequate thing he could think of, the man said. Evelyn looked at the envelope for a long moment. She picked it up. She turned it in her hands. She set it back down on the counter. Tell him we're even, she said. The man blinked. He anticipated you might say that. He asked me to tell you, if you did, that he respectfully disagrees. He said. He paused, as if recalling the exact wording carefully. He said, you gave me something I had forgotten existed. There is no monetary equivalent. But she should send Marcus to college without worrying about it. Evelyn was quiet. She thought about a walk-in freezer. She thought about a man saying his daughter's name in the dark. She thought about the smile that had come to his face like a light in a room that had been dark for years. She thought about what it cost him, probably, to trust something again. To believe that someone had done something without calculation. She looked out the window. The town car was there idling. She picked up the envelope. She held it for a moment. Then she tucked it into her apron. Tell him, she said, that I said thank you, and that the coffee here is still terrible, and he is welcome back whenever he wants. The man almost smiled. He nodded. He left. Evelyn watched the town car pull away. Then she turned back to the counter. There was a customer at the end who needed a refill and a cook calling back an order and the ordinary beautiful noise of a diner at lunch hour. She picked up the coffee pot. She got back to work. And somewhere across the city, in a building on the 40th floor with a view that cost more than most people earned in a year, Kim Do-han sat at his desk for a moment and did nothing. He had a meeting in 10 minutes. He had decisions to make. He always had decisions to make. But for a moment he sat with his hands flat on the desk and he looked at nothing in particular, and he thought about a woman with a coffee pot who had made a decision in 3 seconds that most people would not make in a lifetime. He thought about what she had said to him in the dark. You can't go back. But you got tonight. He thought about Soo-yeon. He thought about what he had built and what he had broken and the long distance between those two things. Then he opened his desk drawer and took out a piece of paper. He wrote one line on it, folded it, set it aside. It was a list. At the top it said, in his own handwriting, things worth becoming again. He had not made a list like that in 20 years. He started writing. That is the whole story. A woman named Evelyn. A man named Kim Do-han. 3 assassins. A walk-in freezer. And the 11 words that changed everything. Hide here. They are after you. She had nothing to gain. She had everything to lose. She chose anyway. If the story moved you, if Evelyn's courage meant something to you, if the moment in the freezer hit you somewhere deep, please like this video. Takes 1 second and it puts this story in front of people who need to hear it. Subscribe if you are not already here, because there are more stories like this one waiting for you on this channel. And leave a comment. Tell me which moment got you. Was it the coffee spill? The freezer? The smile at the end? I read every single one. The most overlooked people in any room are sometimes the bravest ones in it. Remember that. See you in the next story.